Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to do a little bit of science. How many times have you read on the forums that the big problem with getting access to Mythic Plus dungeons is raider.io? And we see it every single day. My IO score's not big enough and I can't get in and I get stuck everywhere. Just use your own key, forehead, and it's all going to work out well for you. Here's the thing. Sometimes it's true. I live in a bubble when it comes to World of Warcraft. My characters are generally very high geared, and that means that I can walk into dungeons without having raided.io. And I didn't have it installed until this expansion when they asked me to help out with some new raid dates they were getting, because that helps us out quite a lot. So, when Fingal made his Fresh Character series, he started to notice something. He wasn't getting into any dungeons, however, he did have raided.io. And one thing that raider.io does is it carries the score of your main character. So if you roll a new character, people can mouse over that when they have their add-on installed and they see, oh, this character is not as geared as someone else, but look at that main raider.io score. Really high, and Finn's is really high, rocking in about the 1700 mark, meaning that he should be pretty good to get into your dungeons, even if his current character is slightly undergeared. But that wasn't happening. He wasn't getting into those dungeons, and he started to get a little bit, maybe, an idea. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe it's more item level based. Maybe actually the whole thing about raided.io is something that exists in the higher echelons of getting into Mythic Plus pugs, but for the leveling ones, for the ones where you're gearing up your 7s, your 10s, all those kinds of ones, maybe it's just item level based and people don't really care. And that was really interesting to us, because if we could put out there, it's like, hey guys, don't worry too much about this thing. Don't think that this is the big crutch. Then maybe you could just focus on getting your gear either from PvP or from anything you can get your hands on, and that's going to be the big doorway to entry of getting into Mythic Plus throughout your time, right? That would have been a good place to be and some good advice. But how can we be sure? This is where it gets really tricky, guys, all right? So just be a little wary. This is kind of a YOLO experiment that we put together rather quickly just to kind of see what would happen. All we thought is, how can we test this? Well, if we wanted to do this really, really well, we would have to test it off various days, so reset day all the way through to the end of the week, and we'd have to do it with a really vast array of characters. But that's not what we had access to, so we just thought we'd give it a try and see if anything happens of interest. And oh boy, did it. What we had in our team is 2 paladins. We have Nups' paladin, who's been geared throughout PvP, and could have a little bit of bolster of BOEs. So I threw 1 million gold towards Nups in order for him to go to the auction house and boost his character's item level. So now we have paladin number 1. Paladin number 1 has an item level around 220, pretty good, but has no raided.io score and no mythic dungeon experience. On the other hand, we have Finn's Rep Paladin. Finn's Rep Paladin has been geared through dungeons because he did it with guildies and things like that. That means that his Rep Paladin, exact same spec, has a 215 item level, but has a considerably higher raided.io score, and of course carries his main's raided.io score. What this means, and this is all we were trying to get out of this, guys, is we have 2 identical characters as far as the queuing system goes. The only difference between them is one has 5 item levels higher and no raided.io score, and the other one is 5 item levels lower, but does have a higher raided.io score. And the whole purpose of this was that so when people see all those names appearing when they're choosing people for their groups, the only realistic difference they can see between them are those 2 factors, item level and if they have it installed, raided.io. So our hypothesis was pretty simple for this little quick experiment we threw together. I would expect, personally, that overall, the highest item level is going to get in. Certainly when we're looking around the 10s to 15 marks. Once we start getting to 14s and 15s that reward the Great Vault reward, the highest you can get, I think raided.io would become more relevant, and the lower and lower we go, the less relevant it is. So how do we test this? Well, we had the guys sit there for a few hours. Sorry guys, I did farm this out to Nups and Finn to do. They sat there for a few hours and basically they queued for the exact same dungeon at the exact same time. So that the leader of those keys would simply see 2 Rep Paladins appear and they would pick from one of the 2. Now they're not always going to get picked, obviously, because Rep Paladins are outside of the meta. That is something that you should need to understand for this. Again, YOLO experiment, we're just having a quick look. And then if they are going to choose one of them, which one will they choose? And the results actually were pretty devastating, in my opinion anyway. When it came to 14 plus, 0, 0, 0 love. In fact, Nups managed to slip in just one singular time, which we suspect heavily was somebody who did not have the Radar.io add-on installed, and it was the only person queuing for that dungeons. Because of course, when it comes to experiments like this, the dungeon itself matters. And we did a quick test with me and Finn where I had a Sanguine Depths Tyrannical key at 15, barely any invites. Finn had a much easier dungeon, or considered much easier on Tyrannical Week, and got lots and lots of invites. I still got plenty, but nowhere near what he did. So that could be a factor as well. So when it came to 14 plus, just no love, guys. No one's letting you in, which does conclude with what we expect. People who are doing 14 plus for their weekly, who want to make sure they're getting that great vault reward, they really do want to see that high item level and probably high Radar.io. They want both of those factors at that point. Okay, so let's try the 10 and above. We've hit Prideful, but we're not getting the big reward from it. What do we see there? And this is where it honestly blew my mind. Basically only Finn, which is shocking. A 10 times more likely chance of Finn being chosen over Nups. That's right. The higher item level character was passed over in nearly every single occasion of all the queues the guys did, compared to Finn, who had the higher Radar.io score, yet the 5 lower item level. Showing just how relevant it is. And it was just mind-boggling to us to sit there and see that time and time again, it was Finn who was chosen. Now, I imagine many of you don't find that surprising at all, but I did not expect, and none of us did, to see such a massive discrepancy. To the point where Nups was essentially passed over every single time, and it could only be, with results this swayed, with the results being so much in favor of Finn, it has to be the Radar.io score. There is nothing else that can separate these two apart from just looking at them. It is the only reason why. And the fact that we then checked and saw just how popular Radar.io is literally like the 3rd most popular add-on in this game. It's everywhere, and it is really the defining factor. Off this alone, obviously based on a very YOLO experiment, it would be easier for me to say, if you really want to open the pearly gates to getting into Mythic Plus, it's boosting your score. And incidentally enough, while we were queuing up to test out about checking out with tanks, because believe me, you guys, this has opened the door for us to run a great number of experiments. We really want to start checking out meta versus non-meta. How more likely is meta classes going to be picked based on their class alone, even if their score is lower or their item level is lower? We really want to see that, and we're going to be testing that next couple of weeks. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And the same with tanks. Open the door for that as well. We really want to see how the tanks play out, because if we have, say, 6 equally geared, very high geared, high Radar.io tanks, how much more often is that Vengeance Demon Hunter going to be picked, especially after what we saw recently in the MDI? So there we had it, 10 times more likely based on Radar.io score of how to get in. And anecdotally, while we were queuing for those dungeons, I had somebody whisper me saying, please let me into this dungeon, I need to boost my IO score in there. This is what a lot of people are farming, and seemingly rightly so. We then tried it again with below 10. These should be the easier dungeons, right? We've not got Prideful yet. However, if you watch tomorrow's TDP, again, stay tuned for that one, this is where the real nightmare is. The 10s are rough, really rough. This is where gear gets you so far, but knowledge seems to run out. And what we found in there is there was some leeway. Nups did get invited more. However, what we generally found is he was invited alongside Finn. The data overwhelmingly still skewed towards Finn. Even when we're looking at 8s and 9s, that Radar.io score was carrying absolutely everything. Absolutely shocking. We were completely shocked from start to finish on this, and as I said earlier, it was a YOLO experiment. Really quick, really dirty, just to see what would happen, and the results were way in favor of one side. So for now, I would definitely suggest that if you are struggling to get into M+ dungeons, building up that score is probably a good idea, because like it or not, I personally don't like it. But like it or not, it is widespread and it is what people are using. Maybe some of you already expected this, and no big deal, and I understand that as well. But we will be looking at many more factors over the next few weeks, so watch out for it. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.